Science shouldn't feel like a closed door. Welcome to Human Verified, your backstage pass to the world of high-stakes research and the business of staying alive. My name is Gina Winchester, a Native American scientist, professor, author, and I've created this space where we swap dense academic jargon for fresh, no-nonsense insights. Whether I'm deconstructing pharmaceutical breakthroughs, clinical trials, or the how this is legal side of STEM business, I'm here to bridge the gap between the lab bench and your daily life. It's rigorous research met with real-world storytelling because understanding how science works is the ultimate power move.
Buju bima jijak. Mukade seneque winejejiat indigenakas. Chigwe ga meko o endorum. Keganek bodawadnek endao. Mishkokikwe. Minopamadzat. Pinawi widokwa bimajijok. Jotse kuwitmo naman. Nishnabe debagan. Piganot moan wishka bimajijok. I na nagushka moat asnabak. Ndash we dokwaman, pokegnek bodawadnek. Ashnabe we dokwaman. Mdas wak das te bigwa, mahtona jayi yakshode, kucha gamigak.
Greetings, all my relatives. I am called Mukadea Seneque Wenajejiat, a Blackstone woman of the family of good beings. Thunderbird and Bear are my clans. I am Pokagon Band Potawatomi, people of the fire. I am a medicine woman. I am a good being. Here I will tell you of all my relatives, measurement, mathematics, and the ancestral knowledge of the ancient ones, emphasizing how the Anishinaabe know the science of the stars and universe. My tribe, the Pokagon Potawatomi, is part of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Anishinaabe. 10,000 years at least, we have been here at the Great Lakes. Pokagonek Bodawadmek Ndao. Much of this editorial will be converting the concepts of the colonizers into those of the native peoples of the American supercontinent and back again. In the Great Lakes, the first colonizers were the French. Then came the Spanish and the British. Then came the first citizens of the United States. The history of my people predating colonization is shown throughout the journals, accounting logs, and other trade transactions with each of these groups. This includes public records of the United States government throughout its entire history, including today. The Anishinaabe language and its dialects of the Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi are complex and polysynthetic. They are interesting and worth their own study. In this editorial, though, I'm going to speak on the language of native mathematics and how this relates to traditional native science. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about me and how this nature versus nurture phenomenon drove my own development and aptitude, ultimately leading me to a path to a PhD in complex systems and brain sciences, bringing us to today. To do this, I will be comparing native math and science to that of colonizer concepts. Notice I do not use the word settlers because colonialism is a broad category of behavior. Colonization is the time period. Colonizing is the verb, and colonizer describes the people who engaged in that behavior. Interactions between early colonizers and Native Americans are documented across many publications, but for this editorial, I am drawing heavily from Native American Mathematics by Michael P. Kloss, published in 1986. It provides a great overview and, in particular, the essays in this book document mathematical concepts of the Anishinaabe. Understanding native languages and translations in general. This exploration begins by showing the differences between European and Native American languages, specifically Potawatomi. We do this because mathematics is actually a language for describing existence and the universe, something people from all walks of life have done for time immemorial. Let me begin by directing you back to the greeting and translation provided at the beginning of this editorial. Translating English into Potawatomi, the Potawatomi language, is a process of shifting from English's noun focus to a verb focus. In Potawatomi, you don't just have a name or a title. You are called a certain way, or you carry a certain spirit. Because Potawatomi is a polysynthetic language, many of the complex concepts, like being a medicine woman, are expressed as a single continuous set of descriptive words that act as a sentence. Kwe is an article given to words to demonstrate the feminine, and in this case, the word woman. Mishkaki literally translates to strength from the earth. It implies a chemical and biological understanding of the soil's power. In the early 1900s, my family's name was changed to Winchester during the Great Assimilation. In actuality, Winnijesiet is my family's name, and it means a good being. I used this phrase later in the paragraph as Minobimajet, which is the word used to say I am a good being, the verb from Bimajijwin. It doesn't just mean good person, it describes someone whose life is in balance with the earth and the Native American people, Anishinaabe. Anishinaabe Dabagan, or mathematics, is a word with the root dabagan, which means a measure or to weigh. By using this term, I am referencing the anthropomorphic mathematics that I will describe below, the science of measuring the world relative to the human body and the good path. Kuchagamigak means the Great Lakes region, specifically Kucha, great big, Gami, water sea, Gak, location or place. This describes the topology of the Anishinaabe ancestral lands. E na nagash ke moat refers to the science of astronomy and star knowledge. The root na nagash refers to the stars and emphasizes that Anishinaabe science is celestial, and these are the teachings of the Star World perspective. It is not merely a collection of titles or descriptions. It is the establishment of relationships that define us as a family, tribal members, and stewards of the natural world. As children of the original man, Nenabuju, we operate within a universe that encompasses every being on Earth, the star world, and the spiritual world. By understanding how our language favors verbs and relationships over isolated nouns, we see that our science is not a series of rigid points, but a sophisticated study of motion, flow, and the interconnected patterns of a living universe. This is important to me for so many reasons. Selfishly, I have been exploring these concepts because I've always wanted to know why this path just made sense to me, when a majority of people I met thought it was so unusual, but it really did just make sense to me. I just see the world differently than other people. Nonlinear dynamics, complexity, deterministic systems, network dynamics, and their applications in neuroscience just come naturally to me. What I've discovered on my journey is that this ease is rooted deeply in the Native American culture and perspective I was born into, combined with a little bit of nature that I'll go into at the end. Uniting the Native perspective with my mother's Italian heritage, which derives from northwestern Italy on the border of southeastern France, I have come to be the scientist I am today. I will show you that this is not accidental, but a mix of both linear and nonlinear perspectives taken from both my heritages. They have come together in the phenomenology that is me. I am a product of my people, and my aptitude reflects these truths. Mdas wak das de big one, ma tano, jayiyak shore kuchagamigak. There is ample evidence demonstrating the 10 millennia we have lived in the Great Lakes region. They come from archaeological evidence, DNA analysis, carbon dating, tribal oral tradition, and corresponding geological evidence. For example, the ancient canoe cache dated 5,200 to 1,200 years ago was discovered just a handful of years ago in Lake Mendota, Wisconsin. This area is home to various native nations, such as the Ho-Chunk and several Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Ottawa tribes. Archaeologists have recovered 16 ancient dugout canoes. Carbon dating shows the oldest is about 5,200 years old. Caching involves storing canoes underwater during the harsh 7-month-long winters of the Great Lakes to prevent the wood from cracking. It is a specific Great Lakes cultural technology described in Potawatomi, Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Ho-Chunk traditions. Finding a 5,200-year-old elm canoe in the same location as a 1,200-year-old one proves that the same scientific and cultural methods were used in the same spot for several millennia. The old copper culture is a specialized metallurgic tradition centered in the Lake Superior and Lake Michigan basins and represents another batch of key evidence. Native copper was mined and cold hammered into projectile points, knives, and fish hooks as early as 4000 BCE. While early 19th century scholars incorrectly attributed these to lost European civilizations, modern analysis shows these tools share the same design logic as later Anishinaabe tools. The old copper complex sits directly within the ancestral territory of the Anishinaabe and other tribes, representing a 6,000-year history of local engineering. The history of the Anishinaabe can also be found in the Great Lakes themselves. When the Great Lakes were much lower than they are today, people lived on land that is now underwater. Scientists have found caribou drive lanes and hunting blinds 120 feet below the surface of Lake Huron, called the Alpena Amberley Bridge. These stone structures date back over 9,000 years. This archaic period discovery is consistent with Anishinaabe oral tradition, which speaks of a time when the Great Water, Kachigamigak, was different, and people crossed areas that are now submerged. The location of these ancient drive lanes matches traditional hunting patterns still remembered in Anishinaabe stories. Not only that, the legacy of the Anishinaabe is written into the very core of our blood, serving as a biological record of a civilization living in the Great Lakes for over 10 millennia. Central to this story is a unique genetic haplogroup found in high frequencies among the Anishinaabe. Genomic studies of ancient remains prove that this lineage has been rooted in the Great Lakes and Northeast for at least 8,000 to 10,000 years, possessing no direct links to any other present-day genetic lines. This contradicts colonial myths that the Anishinaabe were recent migrants to the region. When combined with the physical evidence of ancient dugout canoes and sophisticated copper metallurgy, science reveals that the Anishinaabe are not mere visitors. We are the original cultural and biological inhabitants of the Great Lakes, maintaining an unbroken connection to the land for more than 10,000 years. Jutse, Kuwitmo naman, Nishnaabe debagan, Piganotmoan, Wishkat, Bemajijak, I na nagoshka moat asnabek. I begin with the fields of ethnomathematics and ethnoscience, established in the 1950s and 1960s. These disciplines treat math and science not as a set of dry textbook rules, but as a vital survival tool shaped by the landscape we call home. As discussed in Michael P. Kloss's book Native American Mathematics, our understanding of numbers and space is a direct adaptation of our environment, functioning much like the physical tools we build to survive. Central to this perspective is the work of J. Peter Denny, a researcher who utilized linguistic morphology to decode native science. Denny drew from a rich tapestry of sources, such as the 1853 dictionary of Frederick Baraga, who documented the verb-based nature of the Anishinaabe language. Also, the 1957 study by Leonard Bloomfield on the polysynthetic structure of the Eastern Ojibwa. He combined these technical linguistic studies with the lived experiences found in the journals of the Mississauga and Ojibwa missionary Peter Jones, Gake Wakwonabe, and the 1850 history of George Cupway, Kage Gagabo. These accounts of seasonal migrations and mental mapping provide the ethnographic ground truth for Denny's theories on topological math, a science used to navigate and survive across thousands of miles. The landscape of the Great Lakes deeply influenced this mathematical logic. In dense forests with limited visibility, absolute directions like north or south are often less practical than relational ones. Consequently, Anishinaabe spatial logic is embedded in verbs that focus on pathways, movement, and how objects relate to one another within a landmark-rich environment. This is a journey-based math where the shifting perspective of the hunter is the primary coordinate. The Great Lakes woodland natives differ from other cultures, such as the Inuit, who navigated an expansive, barren Arctic landscape where getting lost was a death sentence. To survive, the Inuit developed a sophisticated system of spatial reasoning using a dense code of linguistic localizers to pinpoint positions with extreme precision. While the European might see a featureless white plain, the Inuit hunter sees a highly organized grid built for absolute accuracy over vast distances. The fundamental difference between Native American and colonizer perceptions has led to significant modern misconceptions. Colonizers wrongly assumed native mathematics was simple because it frequently bypassed the massive cardinal number systems used by European bureaucracies, something that just wasn't necessary in native cultures. Remember, utilization is a fundamental to native truths. Native cultures focused on the practical numbers needed for daily life and trade. They developed spatial and relational logics that are often far more complex than the systems taught in modern classrooms. Through the synthesis of linguistic fieldwork in Native American writings, Denny demonstrates that native science is a sophisticated, ecological mastery of the world's true geometry. This brings us to the major point of misconception between colonizer and Native American math, the definition of obscenely large numbers. Native Americans don't have singular terms for things like billions because the idea of counting that high seems unnecessary to our general purpose. Why count that many trees? What does that really give you? Yes, we have a defined base 10 counting system, Mitaswi, but the need for a massive abstract number was rare because our society doesn't require a dense bureaucracy that gunks up European society. Our counting systems were modular. Just because our language doesn't have a simple word for 1 billion doesn't mean we couldn't express it. Our language used multiplication and addition. For example, 4 20s is 80 to express large numbers, and this continued into the billions, but that was such a rare case that it really wasn't used. For us, precision is what matters. If you're tracking a herd or trading furs, you need exact numbers. If you're describing the distance to a lake, you might use time distance, like how many pipe breaks it takes to get there. This is contextual math. It trades abstract precision for practical accuracy. Knowing it takes 3 rests to reach a destination is more useful for survival than knowing it is exactly 4.2 miles away. On top of that, we use classifiers to categorize objects by their shape and physical properties before they're even counted. We don't just count 5 things. We count 5 long and thin things or 5 round and solid things. This is an incredibly efficient way to manage resources. By embedding the physical nature of an object into the number itself, the math automatically accounts for how those objects will be handled, stored, or used in construction. It's a built-in inventory system that prioritizes the utility of an item over just its quantity. Colonizers just didn't understand the relational component of this and mistakenly thought that Native Americans couldn't count. Obviously, that's not true. Our language is polysynthetic, and our words combine multiple terms into one word that acts like a sentence, as I showed you at the beginning of this editorial. Interestingly, much like how the English used a royal person's feet to account for units of measurement, Native Americans used anthropomorphic units, which are those based on the human body, Anishinaabe. We are the standard unit. A canoe might be measured in hand spans or arm lengths. This ensures that the tool is perfectly proportional to the person who will use it. It's a highly individualized form of engineering where the math ensures a custom fit for every piece of technology created, from snowshoes to clothing. Anishinaabe mathematics is far more than a tool for simple counting. It is the source code for a sophisticated way of living. The numbers functioned as cognitive anchors that unlocked vast libraries of information. In traditional forms of written language, pictography, a sequence of marks on a birch bark scroll was never just an abstract total. It was a memory trigger that signaled the precise layer of a ceremony, the specific day of a migration, or the correct step in a medicinal recipe. By linking oral traditions, songs, science, and history to these numerical tallies, we could recall swaths of information with mathematical precision. Please note, in the next section there are some French words. This is going to be really difficult for me because I speak Italian, and in Italian you pronounce every consonant, every vowel with a lot of emphasis, and you roll your R's. French is very different, so French people, I'm really sorry. Accounts of Anishinaabe science. The historical record of the Great Lakes serves as an archive of Anishinaabe scientific and mathematical genius. While colonizers often lacked the formal vocabulary to name what they were witnessing, their observations provide human-verified evidence of a civilization's mastery over nonlinear logic and materials science long before the arrival of the European academics. This legacy of engineering began at the water's edge, where Samuel de Champlain marveled at the birch bark canoe. This vessel was a masterpiece of hydrodynamic engineering and anthropometric scaling, designed to achieve maximum weight-bearing capacity with minimal mass. The production of these crafts relied on a sophisticated biochemistry documented by Gabriel Sagard, who recorded the use of charcoal and plant resins as specialized waterproof sealants. As others like Pierre Esprit Radisson and Jacques Marquette moved deeper into the territory, they encountered a people who actively engineered their environment through fire ecology. By using controlled burns to manage forest succession and biodiversity, the Anishinaabe practiced a form of science that treated the wilderness as a managed garden. This ecological intelligence was supported by a precise method that often surpassed European charts in its relational spatial logic. The intellectual framework of this society, captured by Baron de Léotard, revealed a world categorized by shape and state of matter. This Star World perspective was deeply integrated into a 13-moon calendar and celestial navigation recorded by Pierre-François Xavier de Charlevoix. Even the social structure served a biological imperative, as noted by Jean de Brebeuf. For example, the Anishinaabe clan system functioned as a form of genetics. By managing genealogy and marriage rules across vast distances, the clans acted as a biological shield to ensure genetic diversity and prevent bottlenecks long before the modern discovery of DNA. The synergy of sciences reached its peak in the Three Sisters: corn, beans, and squash. This system represents a perfect integration of structural biology. The corn is the trellis. Chemistry, the beans as nitrogen fixers. And ecology, the squash as a living mulch. Even the chemistry of the plate was considered, as these crops combined to provide a complete set of essential amino acids. Collectively, these traditions proved that the Anishinaabe science was never just about survival. It was a sophisticated masterclass in topology, phenology, and functional harmony, all dedicated to supporting the good life. Anishinaabe Science of Time. In the human-verified view, Anishinaabe science is an integrated survival software where astronomy and mathematics serve as the dual gears of a single living clock. For the people of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Ottawa, the universe is governed by the principle that the earth is a direct reflection of the sky. Anishinaabe logic dictates that when a constellation like Mishi-Biji, the great underworld panther, reaches the specific angle in the spring, the truth is a physical reality. The ice on the Great Lakes is becoming volatile and dangerous. At the core of this system is a rejection of linear time in favor of recursive cycles. The Anishinaabe utilize modular arithmetic to track the 13 grandmother moons. By calculating 13 cycles of 28 days, they arrive at a 364-day year that remains largely synchronized with biological rhythms, such as Nami-Benegizis, the sucker moon, or Wabegonegizis, the flower moon. This ensures that the community remains in a state of equilibrium between the human, the terrestrial, and the celestial. Navigation and engineering further demonstrate this predictive math. The path of Ojig, the fisher, known to some as the Big Dipper, as it circles Gawedinung, the North Star or Going Home Star, follows a predictive circular arc. Anishinaabe travelers use these arcs as a navigational algorithm, measuring distances along Jibikona, the Spirit Path or Milky Way. This allowed for precise travel across vast waterways long before the magnetic compass. Even the holes in the handle of the Fisher constellation served as mnemonic data points, stories acting as hard-coded memory to ensure hunters never lost their way. As you can see, Anishinaabe and other native cultures had a vast mathematical and scientific knowledge that simply didn't fit into colonizer mentalities. Neither was better than the other, and in fact, both have come together in the modern world. Since the 1960s, nonlinear mathematics and sciences, emphasizing complexity, networks, dynamical systems, and other fractal mathematics have become essential to our current society. Without these, quantum mechanics, coding, algorithms, and other forms of technological advancement wouldn't be possible. Merging the linear and the nonlinear is the path of the future and the culmination of diverse perspectives. And that brings us back to me. I can't speak about other natives or their lived experiences, but I can tell you of mine and how this phenomenon shaped the path of my life, giving you that human verified truth. Ultimately, this is a situation of nature versus nurture and how it all comes together to determine a path one might take. Potawatomi genetics, nature versus nurture, and me. As I said, I ended up looking into this subject because I wanted to understand why some things were just easy for me, but others thought they were so odd or incomprehensible. When I began my deep dive into Native American math and science, it suddenly became clear. Yes, I do have a natural aptitude for some things that I'll discuss in just a second, but without the Potawatomi perspective, none of that would have been nurtured. Simply put, being born into the Potawatomi culture dominated my path to science. Now you might say, well, what about your mother? You said something about her being Italian. Yes, she is. Her Northwestern Italian heritage gave me a sense of empathy towards the clinical realm. Italian science and medicine are world-renowned and have been for 3 millennia, all on their own. But when it came to the clinical path, it was my father's traits and culture that pushed me towards the clinical sciences rather than medical practice. So I have to tell you a little bit about him. He is an architect for our tribe and met my mother while on the Notre Dame architecture program's required 1-year residency in Rome. So he has both the Native American and Italian perspectives on math, engineering, and architecture. I never realized that until I was in college and lived in Rome myself. I was always hanging out in his office, rummaging through schematics, listening to him talk about shapes and structures and materials science. He would tell me of our ancestors, our culture, and our history. I was very blessed to have been born into my Potawatomi heritage, never having known a life where it didn't influence my path. Many Native Americans were robbed of that, but I was deeply embedded in my tribe. When my father came to see me in Europe, we met up in Paris and spent the entire trip walking around and talking about architecture. He showed me flying buttresses and described the materials used to make the archways as we moved through Notre Dame herself. And again, I apologize for the French. I roll my R's because I speak Italian. I can hear it. Shortly thereafter, when I returned to the States and finished my own degree at St. Mary's College in Notre Dame, also on Pokagon land, I had to choose between science and medicine. So I chose neuroscience and this program at Florida Atlantic University that would allow me to tap into the concepts we've been talking about and combine them with neuroimaging in real people. I explored neural network topology, clinical neuroscience, neuropsychology, cognition, and biochemical functions using the techniques of MRI, PET scans, blood work, and genetic testing. Even today, my expertise is in aging, dementia, and Alzheimer's disease. Not surprisingly, I'm going to finish this deep dive by telling you how my particular brain and cognitive development are likely a testament to the nature versus nurture of my upbringing. I am the intersection where nature, my unique genetic hardware, and nurture, the cultural software of the Anishinaabe and Italian classism, have fused into a single, cohesive, scientific aptitude. Regions of the brain most associated with the science and math we've covered in this editorial are found in the prefrontal, parietal, and occipital lobes. Research has shown that the parietal and occipital brain regions have evolved differently in some native male populations. Comparing more than 19,000 UK adults 40 to 85 years old and 1,000 South American natives, researchers found that the native men had a little more cortical volume as they aged. Maybe a slightly larger volume of tissue in these regions could promote different factors that facilitate increased aptitude. Other studies have shown that brain networks and network topology can be different in people who are prone to enhanced spatial organization, quantity representation, high-level geometry, fractals, and other mathematical concepts, all of which are mathematical and scientific concepts we've covered in this editorial. While I have not been tested for these specific cognates, funny enough, I would participate in studies in grad school for my fellow colleagues and was often thrown out because my data would just do weird things. I was an outlier. I was such an outlier that I didn't even seem to fit what the study was going for. A few of these studies were focused on key factors in something called hysteresis, and after that, no one would let me participate. My hysteresis-based changes were so far outside the norm that they just messed everything up and no one would know what to do with me. Perhaps it's because of my nature and my nurture. The things that would come easily to me and confound other people are largely based in consciousness and perception. It affects your brain network dynamics and a whole host of other things. Perhaps my genetics, my cultural backgrounds, and my upbringing pushed me in a direction that traditional science just can't account for. We would need a lot more Native Americans who were born into their cultures, raised in those cultures, and have an affinity for science to do that type of research. That's totally plausible, but it's just not something that's happening right now. But at least I have a few answers. I continue to go further and further down the rabbit hole, and I'm fully invested in understanding Native American math and sciences. Diversity of perspectives and influences is vital to the advancement of STEM. The more, the merrier. We all move through this existence, but we do it in unique individual ways that might have something to contribute to the future of R&D, medicine, and academia. This is just the beginning for me, and with some luck, I may be able to work directly with tribes to pursue this further. Putting it all together, I hope you can see what I see. I hope you realize how complex the Native American math and sciences are, and how together with other approaches, we could move human evolution even further. Nwakmawan ndobingam. Nmash mashkiki mawa, pinawi mi jut mawanman. Nayap mdasam daswak, das da bingwan. I honor my ancestors. They have given me wisdom and a strength that I will give to the next 7 generations. Miigwech e wiwi do kwayan ngum gi shkak. Thank you for spending this time with me today.